Welcome back, dear friends and story lovers. Tonight, we bring you a tale where love is tested, secrets come to light, and fate takes an unexpected turn. Every moment will pull you in deeper, and every choice could change everything. But tell us where you're watching from in the comments, and if this story touches your heart, like, subscribe, share it with someone who believes in true love, and hit the bell so you never miss the next chapter. Asterisk, the fluorescent lights in Memorial Hospital's break room flickered with the persistence of a dying heartbeat. Maeve Saylor pressed her back against the cold concrete wall, her scrubs still damp with sweat from her 12-hour shift. The coffee in her hands had gone cold hours ago, but she gripped the styrofoam cup like an anchor. "You look like hell," said Marcus, dropping into the plastic chair across from her. Her fellow night shift orderly had kind eyes and calloused hands that spoke of a life lived in service. "Feel worse," Maeve muttered, staring through the small window at Westfield Medical University's gleaming towers in the distance. The irony wasn't lost on her, spending her nights cleaning up death and trauma to afford an education that promised to prevent both. Marcus followed her gaze. "Big day tomorrow, huh? First day at the fancy school?" Maeve's jaw tightened. "Provisional acceptance? One mistake, and I'm back to night shifts forever." She touched the scar running from her left temple to her jawline, a souvenir from a childhood she'd fought to escape. "Some of us don't get second chances. What happened to your optimism?" Marcus asked gently. "Buried it with my grandmother." The words came out sharper than intended. Maeve closed her eyes, remembering Rosa Saylor's final days. The way dementia had stolen her brilliant mind piece by piece. While doctors offered expensive treatments they couldn't afford and cheap sympathy that meant nothing. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Your debt is overdue." "Time's running out, Doc." Blood drained from Maeve's face. Marcus leaned forward, concerned. "What is it?" "Nothing." She deleted the message with trembling fingers. The weight of her secret pressed down like a physical force. Nobody at Westfield could know about the money she owed, about the desperate choices that had brought her here, about the man who owned her soul until she could pay him back. "I should go," she said, standing abruptly. Big day and all. As she walked to her beat-up Honda, another message arrived. "Tomorrow changes everything. Don't disappoint me." Maeve stared at the text until her vision blurred. She'd sold herself to the devil to save her grandmother, but the devil hadn't held up his end of the bargain. She was trapped between two worlds, the pristine halls of Westfield, where she didn't belong, and the darkness that followed her like a shadow. She drove through empty streets toward her studio apartment, unaware that in a penthouse across the city, Dr. Grayson Smith stood at his window, sleepless and haunted by thoughts of a woman whose eyes had seen through him in a single glance. Neither of them knew that tomorrow would be the first domino to fall in a game that would destroy them both. Asterisk, the anatomy lab reeked of formaldehyde and ambition. Maeve stood at Station 12, her hands steady as she prepared to make the first incision. Around her, privileged classmates whispered about weekend, ski trips, and summer homes, while she fought to stay awake after another sleepless night. "Nervous?" asked her lab partner, a blonde named Chelsea, whose father owned 3 hospitals. "No." Maeve's voice was flat as her scalpel found its mark. She'd seen more death in Memorial's emergency wing than most of these students would witness. In their entire careers, the lab doors burst open with theatrical precision. Dr. Grayson Smith strode in, his presence commanding immediate silence. Maeve didn't look up from her work, but she felt the temperature in the room drop several degrees. "Dr. Chen," he addressed the professor, his deep voice carrying an edge of authority that made students straighten involuntarily. "Mind if I observe?" "Professor?" Chen stammered something about honor and unexpected visits, while Maeve continued her dissection with surgical precision. She'd learned long ago that power-hungry men thrived on attention. Deny them that, and they became predictable. Impressive. Technique. The voice was directly behind her now. Maeve finally looked up to find steel-gray eyes studying her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. Up close, Dr. Smith was devastatingly handsome in the way that dangerous men often were, sharp jawline. Expensive suit, the kind of smile that hid secrets. "Thank you," she replied coolly, returning to her work. Where did you learn to handle a blade like that? The question carried weight beyond its surface meaning. Maeve met his gaze steadily. Life has a way of teaching you what you need to know. Something flickered in his expression, interest, perhaps, or recognition of a kindred darkness. Indeed it does, Miss Saylor. She stripped off her gloves with practiced efficiency. Maeve Saylor. Ah, yes, scholarship student. There was no condescension in his tone, which somehow made it worse. I've read your file. Quite compelling. Heat flashed through her chest. My file? University administrators must be thorough in their evaluations. His smile was perfectly professional and utterly cold. Perhaps you'd join me for coffee sometime. Perspectives of our more diverse students. The word diverse hung in the air like a poison cloud. They felt 20 pairs of eyes watching the exchange, some jealous, others pitying. She'd clawed her way here through blood and sacrifice, and he was reducing her to a demographic checkbox. Sure, a man in your position has better things to do than slum it with scholarship students, she said, her voice honeyed with false deference. The mask slipped for just a moment. His gray eyes flashed with something primal, dangerous. Then the professional smile returned. Careful, Miss Saylor? Defiance can be costly in an institution like this. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. As he moved to the next station, Maeve's phone buzzed with another message. Beautiful performance. You have his attention now. Phase 2 begins tonight. Her blood turned to ice. The anonymous texts, the debt, the man she owed her soul to, it had all been orchestrated to bring her to this moment. She wasn't just a student at Westfield Medical University. She was bait in someone else's trap. The parking garage beneath Westfield's medical complex was a concrete tomb at midnight. Maeve's footsteps echoed off the walls as she made her way to level B3, her heart hammering against her ribs. The text had been specific. Come alone. Bring nothing. Tell no one. A black sedan waited in the shadows, engine purring like a predator. The back door opened before she reached it. Get in. The voice belonged to Vincent Carrera, a man whose soft-spoken demeanor concealed the brutality that had built his empire. Maeve slid into the leather interior, her nostrils filling with the scent of expensive cologne and barely contained violence. You did well today, Vincent said, not looking at her as the car pulled away from the curb. Smith took the bait. I don't understand any of this. The lie came easily. She understood perfectly. She was a weapon, carefully crafted and aimed. At a target she was only beginning to see. Vincent's laugh was soft and terrible. Your grandmother needed experimental treatment. $40,000. I provided it. No questions asked. Now you're going to help me collect what Grayson Smith owes me. What does he owe you? Everything. Vincent's voice hardened. 20 years ago, his hospital killed my daughter through negligence. Covered it up. Destroyed evidence. Buried families under legal threats. Thinks his money makes him untouchable. The car stopped outside a warehouse district. Vincent's men opened the door, and Maeve found herself in a sterile room that looked more like a medical facility than a criminal headquarters. Your job is simple, Vincent continued, gesturing to a wall of photographs. Get close to him. Make him trust you. When the time comes, you'll deliver something that will destroy his empire. The photos showed Dr. Smith in various settings bored, meetings, charity, galas, private dinners. In some, he was with a stunning blonde woman who wore her wealth like armor. His fiancée, Vincent explained, daughter of Senator Harrison. Their wedding is in 6 weeks. It would be tragic if something disrupted such a perfect union. Maeve stared at the photos, her stomach churning. I can't do this. Find someone else. There is no someone else. Vincent's hand closed around her wrist with crushing force. Your grandmother's treatment bought you time, but the cancer came back, didn't it? I have access to a drug that doesn't officially exist yet. It could save her life. The room spun. Rosa is dead. She died 6 months ago. Vincent's smile was reptilian.
Did she?
Perhaps you should check Memorial Hospital's long-term care wing. Room 247. The world tilted on its axis. Maeve felt herself falling into an abyss of betrayal and hope so devastating it threatened to shatter her sanity. That's impossible. I saved her life while you grieved her death. Poetic, don't you think? Vincent released her wrist, leaving bruises in the shape of his fingers. She's been asking for you, by the way, wondering why her granddaughter abandoned her. Tears burned Maeve's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. You bastard. Businessman, you, my dear, are about to become the instrument of justice this world desperately needs. He handed her a small device, no larger than a thumb drive. When the moment is right, you'll know what to do with this. As Vincent's men drove her back to campus, Maeve stared at the device in her trembling hands. She'd thought her soul was already damned, but she'd only been standing at the edge of hell. Now she was diving in headfirst. And Dr. Grayson Smith was waiting at the bottom. 3 weeks later, Maeve sat across from Grayson in his private office, the city sprawling beneath them through floor-to-ceiling windows. What had started as academic mentoring had evolved into something more dangerous: stolen glances, casual touches that lingered too long, conversations that danced around the edges of confession. "You're not like them," Grayson said, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey. His wedding ring caught the light, a reminder of the life he was preparing to build with someone else. "The other students, you mean?" Maeve accepted the glass, her fingers brushing his. The contact sent electricity through her system, a betrayal of everything she knew about their situation. "Everyone." His voice was raw, with something that sounded like loneliness. "They see the institution, the money, the power, you see." He trailed off, searching her face. "A man pretending he's not afraid," she finished softly. The confession hung between them like a lit fuse. Grayson moved closer, his hand coming up to trace the scar along her jawline. "What happened?" "My father had strong opinions about women." Who spoke back? The truth slipped out before she could stop it. He didn't like being wrong about anything, especially by his daughter. Grayson's jaw clenched. "Where is he now?" "Dead. Car accident when I was 16. She didn't mention that she'd been the one driving, or that the accident hadn't been an accident at all. Some secrets were too dark, even for this moment, good Grayson said, and the venom in his voice surprised them both. They were inches apart. Now, breathing the same air, balanced on the knife's edge of a decision that would destroy multiple lives. Maeve thought of Vincent's device hidden in her purse, of her grandmother waiting in a hospital room she'd never known existed, of the blonde woman whose wedding dress hung in a mansion across town. "We shouldn't," she whispered, even as her body betrayed her by leaning closer. "No," Grayson agreed. "We absolutely shouldn't." His mouth found hers with desperate hunger, 20 years of emotional starvation condensed into a single kiss. Felt herself falling, not just physically, but completely, into something that terrified her more than Vincent's threats ever could. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Grayson rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. "I'm getting married in 3 weeks," he said. "I know. I'm going to call it off." The words hit Maeve like physical blows. This wasn't part of Vincent's plan. This was real and real made. Everything infinitely more complicated. "You can't do that," she said, hating herself for the words even as they left her lips. "Why not?" Before she could answer, the office door burst open. Vincent Carrera stood in the doorway with 2 armed men, his smile cold as winter. "Dr. Smith," Vincent said pleasantly. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced, though I certainly knew your father." Grayson stepped protectively in front of Maeve, but she could see the recognition dawning in his eyes. "Vincent Carrera, I thought you were in prison." "Release for good behavior." Vincent's gaze moved to Maeve with predatory satisfaction. "I see you've been getting acquainted with my associate." The betrayal hit Grayson like a physical blow. He turned to stare at Maeve, his face cycling through disbelief, hurt, and finally, cold fury. "You're working for him," he said. It wasn't a question. Maeve's world crumbled around her. "Grayson, I can explain 20 years I've been waiting for." "This moment," Vincent interrupted. 20 years since you destroyed my family. I'm now, thanks to Miss Saylor's excellent work, I have everything I need to return the favor." Vincent nodded to his men, who produced a tablet displaying security footage, Maeve and Grayson in compromising positions, time-stamped and crystal clear. Senator Harrison will find this very interesting, Vincent continued. Well, the medical board, the university trustees, and every major news outlet in the country. Your engagement, your career, your precious reputation, all of it ends tonight. Grayson looked at Maeve one final time, and the devastation in his eyes was more brutal than any physical wound. Get out, he said quietly, both of you. Before I do. Something we'll all regret. But as Maeve was dragged from the office, she saw Grayson's hand moving toward the desk drawer where she knew he kept a gun, and realized that sometimes the person you destroy is the only person you've ever truly loved. The warehouse was burning. Maeve kicked through the smoke-filled corridors, Vincent's device clutched in her bleeding hands. She'd made her choice 20 minutes ago when she'd stolen the evidence from Vincent's safe and triggered the building's sprinkler system. Now, she had seconds before the whole place went up in flames. Behind her, gunshots echoed through the concrete maze. Vincent's men were closing in, but she'd bought enough time for what needed to happen next. Her phone buzzed with an incoming call. Grayson's name on the screen. Don't do this. His voice was hoarse with desperation. Whatever he has over you, we can fix it together. It's too late for together, Maeve said, reaching the exterior wall where she'd planted the explosives. Your fiancé is safe. The wedding is still on. You get to keep your perfect life. I don't want my perfect life without you in it. The words hit her like shrapnel. She'd expected anger, betrayal, hatred, not this raw confession that made her decision 1,000 times harder. My grandmother is in room 247 at Memorial Hospital, she said, setting the detonator. Promise me you'll take care of her when I'm gone. Maeve, don't promise me. I promise. Now get out of there. She closed her eyes, remembering the taste of his kiss, the way he'd looked at her like she was worth saving. There's something else you need to know about your father's hospital, about Vincent's daughter. It wasn't negligence, Grayson. It was murder. The line went silent, except for his ragged breathing. Vincent discovered that your father was selling experimental drugs on the black market, she continued, her finger hovering over the detonator. His daughter died because she was a test subject, not a patient. Vincent's been planning this revenge for 20 years, and I was just the latest tool in his arsenal. Where did you get this information? The device Vincent wanted me to plant contained more than just surveillance footage. It had financial records, medical files, everything. That proves what really happened. She could hear sirens in the distance now. I'm uploading it all to every major news outlet and the FBI. Your father's crimes will be exposed. But so will Vincent's. Justice for everyone, including you. Tears streamed down Maeve's face, especially me. Vincent appeared at the far end of the corridor, his face twisted with rage. You stupid little girl, you've destroyed everything. Good, Maeve said, and pressed the detonator. The explosion ripped through the warehouse like the hand of God, consuming evidence and lies and 20 years of festering hatred. Maeve felt the concussion lift her off her feet, felt the heat sear her lungs, felt gravity reclaim her with violent finality. But as darkness closed in, she heard Grayson's voice through the phone, calling her name like a prayer. 6 months later, Grayson stood in the Memorial Hospital long-term care wing, reading to an elderly woman whose eyes sparkled with the same intelligence he'd fallen in love with in her granddaughter. She would have been a brilliant doctor, Rosa Saylor said, her voice thick with medication but clear with pride. She was brilliant at everything, Grayson replied, closing the medical journal he'd been reading aloud. The experimental treatment is working. The cancer is in remission. Rosa smiled, the expression achingly familiar. She saved me twice, you know. Once with her sacrifice, and once with your love. Grayson squeezed the old woman's hand, his wedding ring long since removed and locked away with all his other beautiful lies. Outside, snow fell on the city like absolution, covering the scars left by Vincent's warehouse and the truth it had contained. The door opened, and a familiar voice said, "Sorry I'm late. Physical therapy ran long." Grayson turned, his heart stopping as it did every day when he saw her. Burns covered half of Maeve's face, and she walked with a cane now, but her eyes still held that defiant intelligence that had first captured him. "How are the wedding plans coming?" Rosa asked, with devilish innocence. Maeve's scarred hand found Grayson's, their fingers intertwining with practiced ease. "We're thinking small ceremony," she said. "Just family." "Perfect," Rosa said, and closed, her eyes with a contented smile. Outside, the snow continued to fall, washing the world clean of its sins, one flake at a time. In room 247, 3 survivors of different kinds of hell sat together in comfortable silence, living proof that sometimes the most beautiful love stories are written in ashes and forgiveness. Sometimes the only way to save someone is to shatter completely and trust them to help you rebuild from the pieces. The end.